London has many mainline terminus stations. Hold on, that sounds wrong to me. Terminal stations? Stations where the main lines terminate. Most of them have an underground station attached for onward travel. In most cases, they're served by more than one line. The obvious exception is Fenchurch Street, which has no dedicated tube station. A couple of you have asked in the comments section, why is that? Well, the first point we should make is that "it's not on the underground" is a very relative term. Let me put it this way. There's the entrance to Fenchurch Street, and there's the entrance to Tower Hill. Changing from the tube at Tower Hill to the train at Fenchurch Street is actually easier than a lot of the interchanges within other tube stations. And let me show you something else. Here's the main entrance to Fenchurch Street station. There is the turning off Fenchurch Street that leads to the main entrance. And there's Aldgate. Let me zoom in on that so you can see it better. It's not a very long or complicated walk. Fenchurch Street has out-of-station interchange with Tower Hill, Aldgate and the Docklands Light Railway station at Tower Gateway. So if you change trains between those stations, it all counts as the same journey for fare purposes. So while in theory Fenchurch Street is not on the underground, it is actually quite well connected. While we're here, check out this old sign at Fenchurch Street with the original DLR logo. Not really relevant to the video, I just thought it was cool. Of course, the original question was, why does Fenchurch Street not have a dedicated underground station? The simple answer is, it just doesn't. But that's not helpful, so let me elaborate. These days, we think of London's rail network as this holistic thing designed to offer quick interchange. But that's not how it was built at all. The Underground was built by a number of different companies, so too were the different termini. Direct interchange in the modern sense was not a consideration, and so the Underground stations were often built separate from the mainline terminus. Here at Paddington, for instance, the District and Circle Line entrance is across the road from the mainline station. Here at Euston, this disused building was once an entrance to the Northern Line. In 1933, the different Underground railway companies were amalgamated together with the bus and tram companies to form London Transport, which took a much more modern approach to things. Over the years, stations were modified or even moved to better serve the termini. Now, the history of the Underground lines that pass near Fenchurch Street is complicated, but, long story short, the Underground arrived here in 1882 with the Metropolitan Railway building a station called Tower of London. This was only a temporary station until the Metropolitan's rivals, the District Railway, could get there. Then the plan was that the two companies would join up and form the Inner Circle, what we now know as the Circle Line. Tower of London station was where Tower Hill station is now, and closed after 2 years. That's because the Metropolitan and the District had agreed to build another station called Mark Lane. Mark Lane was here, somewhat further away from Fenchurch Street than the modern Tower Hill is. So there was this odd situation where the Underground lines had two stations that were kind of near Fenchurch Street, near enough that you could change trains, but you had to be fine with a bit of a walk. Building a station at Fenchurch Street, though, well, it just wasn't worth it to them. Other tube companies would come along and add other termini to the Underground network. Waterloo even got its own dedicated tube line in the form of the Waterloo and City Railway. St Pancras and Broad Street never got their own stations, but since in both cases they were next door to stations that did, King's Cross and Liverpool Street respectively, it didn't make much difference. But still nothing for Fenchurch Street. None of these new tube schemes came close. Why? Well, a lot of it is to do with geography. The tubes were built, as I said, by companies rather than any civic authority, and therefore they went where it was profitable. That meant north and west, not south or east. East London was a fairly working-class part of the city. It was industrial. The majority of people there did not need to commute into the city. If they did, they went by the cheap trams. East London also had a pretty decent network of above-ground railways. In fact, Fenchurch Street was served by the Great Eastern Railway, the North London Railway, the London Tilbury and Southend Railway, and the London and Blackwall Railway. I should also mention that while Fenchurch Street didn't have a connection, the lines into it did. The majority of commuters using Fenchurch Street came from the London, Tilbury and Southend stations out in Essex. In 1902 a new railway was opened, the Whitechapel and Bow. This was a joint venture between the London, Tilbury and Southend Railway and the District Railway. This short line, which ran from the District Station at Whitechapel to the LTSRs at Bromley, allowed trains from Essex to run straight onto the District line, bypassing Fenchurch Street completely. For a time, from 1910 to the Second World War, the district even ran trains to Southend, so a Fenchurch Street interchange was even more redundant. In the County of London Plan of 1943, a proposal was made to demolish Fenchurch Street altogether, with an underground line running in a loop from Liverpool Street replacing it. This didn't get very far, and to be honest, it was never much more than a proposal. It's only in the 1970s that interest starts to appear in an actual honest-to-God Fenchurch Street tube station. At the time, work was being carried out on a new tube line, then called the Fleet Line. This would run from Stanmore to Charing Cross in its initial phase. Then the idea was that it would extend east. It would pass through the city and then on into the Docklands. It was part of a scheme to regenerate the terminally declining dock area. While the Docklands route was uncertain, every iteration of the plan would include Fenchurch Street. But as the decade wore on, the government became less and less enthusiastic about the prospect of a tube line through the Docklands, particularly when things were costed up. In 1979, the Thatcher government came to power, and they really were not very fond of public transport. And they were especially not very fond of building an expensive tube line through an area that was unlikely to amount to anything much. This was before Canary Wharf came along and totally changed everyone's perception of the docks. Instead, a new metro was built, the Docklands Light Railway, opening in 1987. The Jubilee Line would be extended east in 1999, but it would swing south of the river via Waterloo, London Bridge and Bermondsey before hitting the Docklands. And so things remain. It seems unlikely that there will ever be a direct tube connection to Fenchurch Street anytime soon, if such a thing is even needed. That being said, Fenchurch Street is a very busy station during the week. I got my footage at weekends. And it seems likely that it may not be able to handle passenger numbers in the future. So the suggestion has been put forward that it may be closed and rebuilt further east, in which case it will no longer be such an easy walk to Tower Hill. This proposal was put forward before the pandemic, however, so who knows what the future holds now. Well, I hope you enjoyed this disconnected tale from the tube. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like, as ever, to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon and here on YouTube for your ever-generous support. You are the out-of-station interchange to my Aldgate. And I'll see you all again very soon for another Tale from the Tube.